Imagine waking up tomorrow to discover that 20% of the world's oil supply has been cut off overnight, that gasoline at your pump has jumped past $6 a gallon, that cargo ships are on fire in one of the most important waterways on Earth, and that two nuclear-capable superpowers are pointing weapons at each other, and both insisting the other guy fired first. That is not a hypothetical. That is today. In the past 24 hours, the United States and Iran have traded fire in the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow choke point through which nearly a quarter of the world's oil flows. A ceasefire that was supposed to be holding is now hanging by a single thread. I'm going to break down exactly what happened, why it matters to every single person watching this, whether you care about geopolitics or not, and what could happen next. Stay with me, because this story moves fast. To understand today, we need to rewind to February 28, 2026. On that date, the United States and Israel launched a massive coordinated airstrike campaign on Iran, codenamed Operation Epic Fury. The stated goals? Destroy Iran's nuclear program, dismantle its ballistic missile stockpiles, and in a move that shocked the world, eliminate Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Khamenei was killed. That single act changed everything. Iran's response was immediate and ferocious. Missile barrages rained down on Israeli cities. U.S. military bases in the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain were struck, causing casualties. Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon opened a second front against Israel. And then, Iran did something that rattled the entire global economy. On March 4th, Iran officially declared the Strait of Hormuz closed. Now, let me explain why that matters. Before this war, roughly 3,000 ships passed through the Strait of Hormuz every single month. About 20% of the world's petroleum and 20% of its liquefied natural gas moves through that 21-mile-wide channel. When Iran shut it down, commercial traffic collapsed by over 90%. Fuel shortages began rippling across Asia. Oil prices surged, and the global economy started bleeding. Iran made selective exceptions, allowing ships from China, Russia, India, Iraq, and Pakistan to pass. Everyone else turned back, boarded, or attacked. The Joint Chiefs of Staff had actually warned President Trump before the strikes that this exact scenario could happen. Trump reportedly dismissed the concern, believing Iran would quickly capitulate. Instead, 70 days later, we are here. After 5 grueling weeks of combat, thousands dead in Iran and Lebanon, dozens killed in Israel and Gulf Arab states, a ceasefire was announced on April 7th and 8th. Pakistan brokered it, China gave it a final nudge, and Trump declared victory on social media. The framework had clear terms: an immediate halt to hostilities, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and a window for negotiations. But almost immediately, it began to crack. The U.S. had presented Iran with a sweeping 15-point proposal. It demanded Iran end its nuclear program entirely, limit its ballistic missiles, reopen the strait, cut off support for armed groups like Hezbollah, and accept sanctions relief only in exchange for all of this. Iran flatly rejected it. An anonymous Iranian official told state media, quote, "Iran will end the war when it decides to do so." Iran countered with its own 5-point plan, and all U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran and pro-Iranian forces in Lebanon and Iraq, provide security guarantees against future aggression, pay war reparations, and remarkably, grant Iran international recognition of sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz itself. The U.S. rejected that just as fast. And then there was Lebanon. Israel continued striking Hezbollah targets. Hezbollah kept firing rockets. Netanyahu insisted the Lebanon ceasefire was separate. Trump backed him up. Iran said it was all one war. By April 9th, one day after the ceasefire, the strait was already reclosing. Shipping stopped. Accusations flew. The truce was already broken in spirit, if not officially. On April 13th, the United States escalated. It imposed a full naval blockade on Iran, turning away 52 vessels from Iranian ports. Trump threatened to destroy Iranian power plants and bridges if the strait wasn't reopened. On April 21st, he extended the ceasefire again, unilaterally, while keeping the blockade in place. Now, here's where things get very serious and very murky, because last night, the US and Iran fired on each other in the strait, and both sides say the other one started it. Here's what we know. 3 US Navy destroyers were transiting the Strait of Hormuz. According to US Central Command, CENTCOM, those ships came under attack from Iranian missiles, drones, and fast attack boats. CENTCOM says US forces intercepted the threats and struck Iranian military facilities responsible for the attacks. They described it as self-defense. Iran tells a completely different story. An Iranian military spokesperson said US forces violated the ceasefire by targeting an Iranian oil tanker that was moving through coastal waters toward the strait. A second vessel was allegedly struck near the UAE's Fujairah port. US airstrikes, Iran says, also hit civilian areas in Bandar Kamir, Sirak, and Keshem Island in southern Iran, a strategically vital island at the entrance to the strait. Iran says it retaliated and that US military vessels east of the strait sustained, quote, significant damage. Keshem Island, by the way, is no ordinary target. Analysts describe it as the primary platform for Iran's asymmetric naval power. Striking it, or being seen to strike it, is a significant escalation. Meanwhile, Iranian air defenses were reportedly active over western Tehran. The UAE activated its own missile defense systems, intercepting ballistic missiles and drones launched by Iran. That's right, the United Arab Emirates, a non-combatant neighbor, was shooting down Iranian missiles over its own cities. Schools across the Persian Gulf region had already switched to online learning. A major fire at the Fujairah oil industry zone was reported earlier in the week after Iranian drones struck the facility. And as of this morning, Lloyd's of London, which tracks global shipping, confirmed the Strait of Hormuz is closed. No transits recorded since May 4th. So what does the President of the United States say after his Navy and Iran literally just shot at each other? Donald Trump called it just a love tap. He posted on Truth Social that the US had completely destroyed the Iranians involved, including small boats and drones that, in his words, dropped ever so beautifully down to the ocean, very much like a butterfly dropping to its grave. He then issued a direct warning. Just like we knocked them out again today, we'll knock them out a lot harder and a lot more violently in the future if they don't get their deal signed fast. And despite the naval battle that just occurred, Trump insists the ceasefire is still in effect. This is the tightrope the administration is walking. Keep escalating militarily to pressure Iran into a deal, while simultaneously insisting diplomacy is alive. Pakistan, which has been the key mediator, says it remains hopeful. Iranian officials said they were still reviewing the latest U.S. proposal as of Wednesday. Saudi Arabia's Al-Hadath reported that intensive negotiations were underway to reopen the strait, even as the shots were being fired. French President Macron called Iranian President Pezeshkian to condemn strikes on UAE civilian infrastructure and ships near the strait. He called on both Washington and Tehran to immediately lift their restrictions on shipping, with no conditions attached. The UK and France have been hosting conferences to explore reopening Hormuz through diplomatic means, and 38 countries have signed a statement condemning attacks on commercial shipping. Oil markets aren't waiting for the diplomats. Brent crude climbed 1.5% to over $101 a barrel this morning. West Texas Intermediate crossed $95. American gasoline costs 52% more than it did before this war began. 52%. There are really 3 paths from here, and none of them are easy. Scenario 1. The deal gets done. Pakistan and China successfully broker an agreement. Iran agrees to some version of the nuclear constraints, the US lifts its naval blockade, and the strait reopens. Oil flows, prices stabilize, and the ceasefire becomes permanent. This is the best-case scenario, and it's still possible. Iranian analysts suggest Tehran could show greater flexibility on its nuclear program once the fighting fully stops. But the gap between what the US demands and what Iran will accept remains enormous. Scenario 2. Slow burn stalemate. The ceasefire technically holds, but the strait stays effectively closed. Iran doesn't fully block it. It doesn't have to. It just needs to maintain a perception of risk. That alone is enough to keep merchant shipping away. The global economy continues to bleed slowly. Months pass. The humanitarian situation in Lebanon worsens, and the two sides remain locked in a low-grade war fought through economics and proxy attacks, with neither willing to blink. Scenario 3. Full re-escalation. The ceasefire officially collapses. The US resumes its air campaign. Trump has specifically threatened to destroy Iranian power plants, bridges, and the Harg Island oil terminal, which handles almost all of Iran's oil exports. Iran retaliates more aggressively, potentially targeting Gulf Arab infrastructure further. The conflict widens. This is the scenario that keeps military analysts and economists awake at night. Right now, it's day 70 of this war. There are moderates and hardliners inside Iran pulling in different directions. There are hawks and deal-makers inside the Trump administration doing the same. And a 21-mile-wide strait is sitting at the center of it all, holding the global economy hostage. Here is the bottom line. The Hormuz clash last night was not just a skirmish. It was a signal, from both sides, that neither is ready to fully back down. The ceasefire exists on paper. Whether it survives the weekend is genuinely uncertain. What is certain? The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most important waterway, and right now it is a war zone. The price you pay at the pump, the cost of goods shipped across oceans, the stability of governments in Asia that rely on Persian Gulf oil, all of it is connected to what happens in that narrow channel of water. This is not a story happening far away to other people. This is a story happening to all of us. I'll have updates as this develops. If you found this breakdown useful, share it, because understanding what's actually happening here matters. Subscribe for coverage as the situation evolves. And drop your questions in the comments. What do you think happens next? Stay informed, stay sharp.